The ultrasound technician's hands froze mid-scan, her eyes fixed not on the monitor, where a tiny heartbeat flickered in rhythmic waves, but on the patient intake form clipped to her clipboard. She read the name twice, Mr. Caleb Reynolds. Then she did something Nia had never seen in any prenatal appointment. She switched off the machine completely. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of equipment powering down. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, her voice barely steady, "I need Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. Right now." She left the room so quickly, she forgot to give Nia tissues to wipe the gel from her belly. When Dr. Okonkwo entered 3 minutes later, she wasn't alone. She brought another woman older, with graying locks and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much. The doctor locked the door behind them with a quiet click that made Nia's stomach drop. "Is something wrong with my baby?" Nia asked, her voice shaking as she clutched her still exposed belly protectively. 4 months pregnant, she felt dizzy with sudden fear. Dr. Okonkwo took a long breath, her dark skin looking ashen in the fluorescent light. She glanced at the other woman, who nodded slowly. "Mrs. Reynolds," the doctor said carefully, "before I answer that question, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with your baby's health and everything to do with your safety." Nia blinked. "My safety? I don't understand." "Your baby is perfectly healthy," Dr. Okonkwo interrupted gently, "but you need to leave your husband. Today, before you go home." The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Nia laughed a sharp, disbelieving sound. "That's ridiculous. Caleb and I are fine. We're expecting a baby. Why would you?" But her voice died when she saw the doctor's expression. No smile, no backing down. Just pity that made Nia's skin crawl. "Please, Nia, sit up. This is going to be difficult to hear." Nia obeyed, her legs weak. The other woman handed Dr. Okonkwo a manila folder thick with papers. "I didn't plan to get involved in your personal life," Dr. Okonkwo said, her accent thickening with emotion. "But when I saw your husband's name this morning, I remembered something. My colleague here, Dr. Miriam Chen, called me 2 weeks ago about a patient at the IVF clinic where she consults. That patient was you." Nia's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "I don't understand." Dr. Chen leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Mrs. Reynolds, one of the nurses at your fertility clinic came to me 3 weeks ago. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. She said your husband paid her $15,000 to tamper with your IVF treatment." The room tilted. "That's not possible," Nia whispered, shaking her head. "Caleb wouldn't. He was there with me for every appointment." "That's exactly why it worked," Dr. Okonkwo said quietly. "He made sure you trusted him completely. Mrs. Reynolds, your husband bribed 2 people, the nurse and an embryologist. He paid them to use donor sperm instead of his own." Nia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Why?" she finally managed. "Why would he do that?" Dr. Chen pulled out a medical report and held it up. Nia recognized the letterhead, their fertility clinic, dated 8 months before they'd started IVF. "Because these are his real fertility results, doctor," Chen said. "The ones he hid from you. Your husband has a 0 sperm count. It's permanent, caused by childhood mumps. He's known since he was 17 that he could never father children." Nia felt like she was underwater, sounds muffled, breath impossible. "So he lied to me about everything." "Not just lied," Dr. Okonkwo said, her voice dropping to something almost like mourning. "Mrs. Reynolds, this was a setup. His plan was to let you carry this baby to term, wait until after the birth, and then demand a DNA test. The test would prove the child wasn't his, and he would accuse you of infidelity." "He'd destroy me," Nia breathed. "Worse," Dr. Chen said. "We believe he planned to use that to contest your late grandmother's will. You inherited property in Jacksonville, didn't you?" Nia nodded slowly, tears burning her eyes. "He'd take everything," Dr. Chen continued. "Your inheritance, your reputation, custody of your child, and based on what the nurse told me, there are gambling debts involved. Significant ones. You weren't his wife, Mrs. Reynolds. You were his exit strategy." The room spun. Nia's hand moved instinctively to her belly, to the baby who was healthy, who was fine, who was growing inside her while her husband had been planning her destruction. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "Nia, I know this is devastating, but you have time. He doesn't know that you know. You have leverage now. You have the truth before he can weaponize it against you." Nia sat in silence, her mind working faster than her emotions could keep up. Caleb's face flashed in her mind, his smile, his kiss that morning, his voice saying, "Can't wait to see our little one." Our little one. Except it wasn't ours. It had never been ours. It was hers, and he had planned to steal even that. Slowly, Naya looked up at the two doctors, her face calm even as fury built like a storm behind her eyes. "He thinks he's smart," she said quietly, her voice turning to ice. "He thinks I'm soft. He thinks I won't fight back." Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" Nia wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and stood with the kind of stillness that comes right before an earthquake. "I'm going to let him think his plan is working," she said, "and then I'm going to bury him in it." Nia drove home that afternoon with her face calm and her hands steady on the steering wheel, but inside, her heart hammered violently. She replayed the doctor's words in an endless loop. Bribe the nurse. Donor sperm. Plan to accuse you. Gambling debts. Each sentence felt like a blade slicing through 3 years of marriage. When she pulled into the driveway of their Buckhead townhouse, Caleb's silver Lexus was already there. He stepped out onto the porch, grinning like a man who had nothing to hide. "How was the appointment?" he called, jogging down to meet her. He leaned in to kiss her cheek. "Everything good with the baby?" Nia forced a smile. She reached into her purse and pulled out the ultrasound photo Dr. Okonkwo had printed before revealing the truth. "Perfect," she said sweetly. "Everything's perfect." Caleb studied the image, his smile widening. "That's our baby. God, Nia, I can't wait to meet our little one." "Our." He said it so easily, so convincingly. Nia nodded, slipping past him into the house. "I'm going to start dinner." That evening, she cooked jerk chicken with rice and peas, just the way his Jamaican grandmother used to make it. She stirred the pot slowly, watching Caleb through the kitchen doorway as he scrolled through his phone with the ease of a man in complete control. She studied him like she'd never seen him before. The way his smile came too quickly. The way his phone never left his hand. The way he said "I love you" with the exact same cadence every time. "You're quiet tonight," Caleb said, appearing in the doorway. "Just tired," Nia said. "The baby's getting bigger." Caleb wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands on her belly. "You're amazing. You're going to be such an incredible mother." His hands felt like weights. "Thank you," Nia said softly, her voice steady even though every cell in her body wanted to scream. That night, Caleb fell asleep within minutes, the sleep of a man with a clear conscience. Nia lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She planned. And the next morning, she made a phone call that would change everything. 3 years earlier, Nia Reynolds had walked into the Atlanta Contemporary Art Center's annual fundraiser wearing a secondhand dress and practicing her networking smile. She'd just started her job as development coordinator at a small nonprofit arts foundation, fresh from grad school in Jacksonville, determined to build something that belonged only to her, not her late grandmother's legacy, not her estranged mother's expectations, just hers. Caleb Reynolds had approached her at the open bar, his smile practiced but not insincere, his navy suit expensive without being ostentatious. "I hate these events," he'd said, handing her a glass of champagne. "But I saw you standing here looking like you were calculating escape routes, and I thought, finally, someone who gets it." She'd laughed. He'd seemed safe, charming but not aggressive, successful but not arrogant. He worked in financial consulting, advised small business owners on investment portfolios, drove a nice car but not a flashy one. He'd asked about her work with genuine interest, remembered details, called when he said he would. Their courtship had been a slow-build dinner dates at mid-range restaurants, weekend trips to Savannah, conversations about the future that felt organic rather than strategic. He'd proposed after 18 months with a modest ring and a speech about building something real together. "No games," he'd said, kneeling in Piedmont Park on a Sunday afternoon. "No pretense, just us, building a life we can be proud of." She'd believed every word. The marriage had been good at first. Small apartment in Buckhead, shared cooking duties, Sunday mornings reading separate sections of the newspaper in comfortable silence. Then her grandmother died, leaving Nia the Jacksonville property, a 3-unit rental building worth nearly $500,000. Suddenly, Caleb had opinions about everything. They should sell it, invest the money, let him manage the portfolio. "I do this for a living, baby," he'd said. "Trust me." She'd trusted him. A year into marriage, they'd started trying for a baby. Month after month of negative tests, hope dying a little each time. Caleb had suggested IVF with a certainty that felt like relief. "We can afford it," he'd said. "And I want this. I want our family." The IVF process had been brutal hormone injections that made Naya's body feel foreign, endless appointments, emotional vulnerability that left her raw. Through all of it, Caleb had been present, holding her hand during procedures, driving her home afterward, saying all the right things about how strong she was, how lucky he was, how their baby would be worth every moment of pain. She'd placed her entire trust in him during the most vulnerable time of her life. Now, sitting at her kitchen table 3 years later, Nia replayed every moment through the lens of betrayal. The way he'd insisted on coming to every appointment, not support, but surveillance. The way he'd befriended the clinic staff, not friendliness, but cultivation. The way he'd held her hand during the embryo, transfer not love, but performance. Every tender moment had been calculation. Every reassurance had been manipulation. Every "I love you" had been strategy. Small red flags she dismissed now burned like warnings. His control over their finances, insisting they combine everything because married couples should be transparent. His deflection whenever she asked about his clients or his accounts. Confidentiality agreements, baby. Boring stuff anyway. His subtle rewrites of conversations. "That's not what I said. Are you sure you're remembering right? The hormones are affecting your memory." Gaslighting disguised as concern. That evening, Caleb came home carrying takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, his smile easy and affectionate. "Thought my beautiful wife deserved a break from cooking," he said, kissing her forehead. "How are you feeling? How's our little one?" Our little one. The phrase scraped like sandpaper. "Good," Naya said, forcing warmth into her voice. "Tired, but good." Over pad thai and spring rolls, Caleb asked about the ultrasound with the casual interest of someone inquiring about weather. "Everything looked perfect," Nia said, meeting his eyes with a smile that felt like glass. "Strong heartbeat. Right on track. Did they say if it's a boy or girl yet?" "Still too early. Maybe next month." She watched him as he ate. Really watched him. The way his eyes flicked to his phone every few minutes. The way his jaw tensed when she mentioned finances. The way his smile never quite reached his eyes when he talked about the baby. She'd loved this man, trusted him, built a life with him. But that man had never existed. What sat across from her now was a stranger wearing a familiar face, a con artist who'd invested 3 years in a scheme with her inheritance as the prize and her reputation as collateral damage. "You're staring," Caleb said, smiling. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," Nia said softly, and watched his smile widen with satisfaction. He had no idea that every word, every gesture, every moment was now evidence. That the wife he thought he'd deceived was cataloging everything with the precision of someone building a case. After dinner, Caleb settled on the couch with his laptop, muttering about client portfolios. Nia cleaned the kitchen slowly, her mind working faster than her hands. She couldn't confront him. Not yet. Not when he held all the cards, their shared accounts, their lease, her emotional vulnerability visible in every inch of her pregnant body. But she could watch, listen, document. That night, lying beside him in the dark, Nia made a decision that felt like drawing a line in sand that couldn't be uncrossed. She would not cry. She would not scream. She would not give him the satisfaction of knowing she discovered his plan. Instead, she would become what he'd never anticipated, a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. The next morning, while Caleb showered, Nia sat at her laptop and typed 4 words into Google. Private investigator, Atlanta, Georgia. For 3 nights, Nia waited until Caleb's breathing deepened into sleep before slipping out of bed and padding quietly to the guest room she'd converted into a home office. She researched with the focus of someone preparing for war. Georgia law regarding IVF fraud, donor consent requirements, medical malpractice statutes, reproductive coercion. Each search opened new rabbit holes of legal complexity, but one thing became clear. What Caleb had done wasn't just betrayal, it was criminal. According to Georgia Code Section 19721, intentional misrepresentation regarding genetic parentage constituted fraud. The bribery of medical staff added conspiracy charges. If he'd planned to use false paternity claims in divorce proceedings to access her inheritance, that crossed into criminal conspiracy and possibly RICO territory. Nia took meticulous notes, organizing everything in a password-protected folder labeled Baby Registry Research. But knowledge wasn't enough. She needed proof that would hold up in court. Testimony from the nurse and embryologist, financial records showing the bribes, documentation of Caleb's plan. She needed someone who knew how to find what people tried to hide. The emotional war inside her was constant. Rage wanted her to confront him, to scream everything she knew, to watch his face crumble when he realized she'd beaten him to the revelation. But patience whispered that premature exposure would only give him time to cover tracks, destroy evidence, spin narratives. She chose patience. On Thursday morning, Nia called in sick to work and drove to a Starbucks in Decatur, 2 neighborhoods away from their Buckhead routine. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and a baseball cap pulled low precautions that felt melodramatic but necessary. Rachel Grant arrived exactly on time, a black woman in her 50s with silver-streaked locks pulled into a neat bun, sharp eyes behind black-framed glasses, and the posture of someone who'd spent years reading lies in interrogation rooms. "Mrs. Reynolds," Rachel said, sliding into the booth across from her. She didn't smile, didn't offer pleasantries. Just opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a legal pad. "Tell me everything," Nia told her. The ultrasound revelation, Dr. Chen's confession about the bribed nurse, the donor sperm swap, Caleb's known infertility since age 17, the plan to weaponize DNA testing, the Jacksonville inheritance. Rachel took notes in shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions with the precision of someone who knew exactly which details mattered. "Do you have the medical documents the doctor showed you?" Rachel asked. "Photos on my phone. I took them before I left the office." "Smart. Email those to me using a new email account your husband doesn't know about. Create it today." Rachel tapped her pen against the pad. "How are your finances structured?" "Joint checking and savings. My inheritance property is in my name only, but he's been managing the rental income." Rachel's expression darkened slightly. "We'll need to audit that. Men like your husband don't stop at one scheme. If he's willing to commit IVF fraud, he's already done smaller financial manipulations to test your boundaries." The words landed like stones. Smaller manipulations. Testing boundaries. How long had she been a mark? "What exactly do you need me to do?" Nia asked. "Nothing that alerts him. Keep being the wife he expects. But I need access to everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, his phone records if possible, names of his business associates. I need to know who he is when you're not watching." "How long will this take?" Rachel leaned back, studying her. "Depends on how deep this goes. If he's just a narcissistic asshole who bribed a clinic, maybe 2 weeks. If he's what I think he is, someone who's done this before, then we're looking at a pattern. And patterns take time to document properly." "What do you think he is?" Nia asked quietly. Rachel's smile was cold and knowing. "A predator. And predators don't start with the biggest game. They practice on smaller targets first." The words hung between them, reframing everything. This wasn't about one lie or one scheme. This was about who Caleb fundamentally was, someone who saw other people as resources to extract value from. "Mrs. Reynolds," Rachel said, her voice softening slightly, "I've been doing this work for 15 years. Financial fraud, insurance scams, catfish operations, long cons. The good news is, men like your husband always get sloppy. They think they're smarter than everyone else, so they leave trails. Credit card receipts, text messages, email confirmations. My job is finding those trails. And then what? Then we hand everything to your attorney and let the legal system do what it does best, bury people in consequences." Nia felt something loosen in her chest. Not relief exactly, but the first breath after being underwater too long. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't fighting blind. "There's something else," Nia said. "Dr. Chen mentioned gambling debts. She didn't have details, but she said the nurse told her that was part of his motive." Rachel's eyes sharpened. "Gambling debts. That's good. That's a pressure point. Gamblers are desperate, and desperate people make mistakes." She made a note. "I'll start with Charlotte and Raleigh. Those are the closest major gambling markets to Atlanta. If he's in deep, there'll be paper trails. Casino comps, credit applications, debt collection attempts." She closed her portfolio and looked at Nia directly. "I need you to understand something. What we're about to do, building this case, documenting everything, it requires you to stay in that house. Sleep in that bed, smile at that man, Can you do that? Nia thought about her baby, growing inside her, healthy and innocent and unaware. She thought about her grandmother's property that Caleb had been siphoning money from. She thought about 3 years of manipulation disguised as love. Yes, she said. I can do exactly that. Rachel nodded slowly. Good. Because if I'm right, this goes much deeper than you think. 10 days later, Rachel called with a tone that made Nia's stomach drop. You need to sit down for this, Rachel said without preamble. Nia was at work, alone in her office during lunch break. She closed the door and locked it, her hands already shaking. I'm sitting. Your husband owes money to some very serious people. We're not talking credit cards, we're talking underground poker rooms in Charlotte, high-stakes sports betting through offshore accounts. He's into a syndicate for approximately $187,000. The number hit like a physical blow. That's not possible. We don't have that kind of money to lose. You don't, Rachel corrected. But he does, or he did. Mrs. Reynolds, I pulled his business records. Over the past 2 years, approximately $73,000 has gone missing from client investment accounts. Small amounts, shuffled between accounts, disguised as fee adjustments or market corrections. It's sophisticated enough that most clients wouldn't notice, but sloppy enough that a forensic accountant would spot it in an afternoon. Nia's vision blurred. Embezzlement. He'd been stealing from clients. There's more, Rachel continued. Your Jacksonville rental property has been generating about $4,200 monthly in rental income, correct? Yes. According to your joint account statements, he's been depositing $2,200 monthly and calling it rental income. The other $2,000 per month has been going into a separate account you don't have access to. Over 18 months, that's $36,000 he's hidden from you. Nia pressed her hand against her mouth, tasting bile. Mrs. Reynolds, your inheritance wasn't just a target, it was his lifeline. He's drowning in gambling debt to people who don't negotiate payment plans. He needed a way out, a big payout that looked legitimate. A contested divorce where he walks away with half your assets, maybe more if he can prove infidelity and question your fitness as a mother. The pieces assembled with horrible clarity. The pregnancy wasn't about family, it was about leverage. The DNA trap wasn't about ego. It was about engineering a divorce settlement that would save him from debt collectors who broke kneecaps for late payments. She was never his wife. She was his emergency fund. There's something else, Rachel said, her voice careful now. I found evidence of at least 3 other women over the past 7 years. Similar pattern each time: romance, moving fast, gaining access to finances, then disappearing before things implode. One in Baltimore, one in Charlotte, one in Richmond. The Baltimore woman, Claire Jennings, filed a police report about financial abuse but dropped it after 2 weeks. I reached out to her. She's willing to talk. Nia's hand moved unconsciously to her belly, feeling the baby shift inside her, a kick, strong, insistent, alive. This child, this perfect, innocent life growing inside her body, had been conceived as part of a con. Her pregnancy, which should have been joy, had been calculated as collateral for a man's gambling debts and criminal enterprise. Mrs. Reynolds, are you still there? I'm here. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, calm, cold, utterly controlled. What do we do now? Now I document everything. Bank records, casino transactions, communications with the other victims. I'm also reaching out to his employer discreetly about the missing client funds. Once we have everything compiled, we take it to your attorney and to law enforcement simultaneously. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. I want to be thorough. Men like this have lawyers, and lawyers look for holes. I won't give them any. After Rachel hung up, Nia sat in her office chair, one hand on her belly, breathing slowly through the rage and grief and terror. Her baby kicked again, harder this time, as if reminding her of what mattered. Not the betrayal, not the humiliation, not even the money. This child, this life that deserved protection, stability, truth. I've got you, Nia whispered, her voice fierce and trembling. I promise, baby. I've got you. That evening, Caleb came home cheerful, talking about a new client he'd signed, about potential bonuses, about how things were really looking up financially. Every word was a lie wrapped in performance. Nia smiled and nodded and served dinner like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She wasn't just documenting anymore. She was strategizing, planning exactly how to dismantle him piece by methodical piece, Not with emotion, but with evidence. Not with confrontation, but with institutions that didn't care about charm or excuses. "You're glowing," Caleb said across the dinner table. "Pregnancy looks good on you." "Thank you," Nia said, meeting his eyes with a smile that felt like armor. "I feel good. Strong. Stronger than you'll ever know," she thought. That night, lying beside him in the dark, Nia made a vow to the child moving inside her. "Your father thinks he's smart. He thinks he's planned everything perfectly. He thinks the woman carrying you is weak, naive, controllable. He has no idea what's coming. And when it comes, it will be thorough, legal, and absolutely devastating." 2 days later, Rachel sent a single text message that made Nia's blood run cold. "Found the other women. You need to hear their stories. Can you meet tomorrow?" Nia stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. Other women, other victims, other lives he'd tried to destroy. She typed back, "Yes, same place, same time." One more piece of the puzzle. One more layer of deception. And with each revelation, Nia felt something inside her crystallize not just anger, but absolute certainty. Caleb Reynolds had made a catastrophic miscalculation. He'd chosen a victim who documented everything, who stayed calm under pressure, who understood that the best revenge wasn't emotional, it was institutional. He'd chosen a victim who wouldn't break. She'd make sure he regretted that choice for the rest of his life. Claire Jennings looked exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness, the kind of weariness that came from having your reality rewritten by someone you loved. They met at the same Decatur cafe where Nia had first hired Rachel, but this time Rachel had brought Claire, a slender white woman in her late 30s, with auburn hair and eyes that kept darting to the door like she expected someone dangerous to walk through. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Nia said quietly. Claire nodded, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking. "Rachel told me what he did to you, the IVF thing." She closed her eyes. "God, that's worse than what he did to me, and I thought my situation was bad." "What did he do?" Nia asked, though she already suspected the shape of it. "We met in Baltimore 5 years ago," Claire began, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was Caleb Peterson then. Different last name, same face, same charm. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep, had just inherited money from my father's estate, about $200,000. Nia's chest tightened. The same pattern. He was perfect at first. Attentive, romantic, talked about building a future together. We got engaged after 6 months. He convinced me to let him invest the inheritance, said his firm, specialized in aggressive growth portfolios for young professionals. She laughed bitterly. There was no firm, no investments, just fake statements he'd created with Photoshop. How much did he take? All of it. When I finally got suspicious and demanded to see real account documentation, he had an answer for everything. Delayed statements, banking errors, market volatility. Then one day I came home and he was gone. Vanished. No note, no explanation, just gone. With all my money. Rachel pulled out a folder. I found 2 others with similar stories. Melissa Torres in Charlotte, he used the name Caleb Richardson, took $80,000 over 8 months before disappearing. Jennifer Wu in Richmond, Caleb Roberts, took $65,000 before vanishing. None of them pressed charges that stuck, because by the time they realized it was fraud, he'd covered his tracks and moved cities. Nia felt sick. This wasn't a husband who'd lied about fertility. This was a serial con artist who'd been running the same playbook for years, just refining it with each victim. Why me? Nia asked. Why stay married? Why not just take the money and run like before? Because you're smarter than we were, Claire said, looking at Nia with something like admiration. You kept your inheritance property in your name only. He couldn't just drain an account and disappear. He needed a legal mechanism, a divorce settlement, where a judge would give him access. That takes time. Planning. And the pregnancy? Nia's hand moved to her belly. Rachel leaned forward. Insurance. If you got suspicious and tried to leave, he'd have custody leverage. And if his original plan worked the DNA trap, he'd have grounds to contest the inheritance distribution, claim you were unstable, unfit. Courts look favorably on fathers seeking custody from unfaithful mothers. The manipulation was breathtaking in its complexity. Caleb hadn't just targeted her money, he'd engineered an entire legal framework to ensure he could take everything while destroying her credibility. Will you testify? Nia asked Claire directly. If this goes to trial? Claire's hands trembled. He scares me. When I filed the police report, he found out somehow. Called me from a blocked number. Told me if I didn't drop it, he'd make sure everyone knew I'd been involved in the fraud willingly. That he'd fabricated evidence proving I was complicit. I got scared and dropped the charges. He can't do that this time, Rachel said firmly. Mrs. Reynolds has documented everything. Medical fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. And now we have 3 other victims willing to establish pattern evidence. His threats don't work when the charges come from multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. Nia studied Claire's face, the fear, the shame, the anger that had been suppressed for years. She recognized it because she felt it too, the humiliation of having been so thoroughly deceived by someone who'd claimed to love her. He made you feel crazy, Nia said quietly. Made you question your own memory, your own judgment. Made you think you were the problem. Claire's eyes filled with tears. How did you know? Because he's doing it to me too. Or he was. Nia straightened her spine. But I'm not dropping anything, and I'm not scared, because I have something none of you had. What's that? Claire asked. A baby coming in 5 months who deserves better than a con artist father. That's not fear, that's motivation. After Claire left, Rachel and Nia sat in silence for a long moment. There's something you should know, Rachel finally said. I did a deep background check on Caleb. He grew up in foster care in Baltimore. Bounced between homes from age 7 after his mother died of an overdose and his father went to prison. He has no siblings, no extended family, no real connections. Why does that matter? Because it explains his skill set. Foster kids learn to read people, to adapt, to become whatever's needed for survival. Some use those skills to build healthy relationships. Others, she gestured at the empty chair where Claire had sat, become exactly what Caleb is. You're making excuses for him, Nia said coldly. No, I'm explaining him. There's a difference. Understanding a predator doesn't mean forgiving one. Rachel closed her folder. It means knowing how to trap one. That evening, Nia drove home feeling something shift inside her. This wasn't just about protecting herself and her baby anymore. It was about making sure Caleb Reynolds couldn't do to anyone else what he'd done to Claire, to Melissa, to Jennifer, to her. When she walked through the door, Caleb was in the kitchen, cooking pasta, humming along to music. Hey, beautiful, he called. I was thinking we should have a party. Celebrate the baby, invite our friends and family, make it official. Nia froze. A party, public, witnesses. That sounds perfect, she heard herself say. And in that moment, Nia understood exactly how this would end. Not in private confrontation, not in quiet divorce proceedings, but in front of everyone Caleb had ever lied to, everyone he'd ever charmed, everyone who'd believed his performance. He wanted a celebration. She'd give him one he'd never forget. Let's do it in 3 weeks, Nia said, smiling. I'll handle all the planning. Caleb kissed her forehead. You're amazing, you know that? I'm learning, Nia said softly. I'm definitely learning. 3 weeks before the party, Caleb came home with champagne and an idea that made Nia's blood run cold with its perfect, terrible symmetry. I've been thinking, he said, pouring them each a glass sparkling cider for her, real champagne for himself. We should do something big for the baby, a real celebration. My parents have that house in Savannah they never use. Big backyard, beautiful space. We could invite everyone, our friends, your coworkers, my clients. Make it memorable. Nia sipped her cider slowly, her face carefully neutral. That sounds lovely. When were you thinking? 3 weeks from Saturday. Gives us time to plan, but not so long we lose momentum. He grinned, and Nia recognized that expression. Now the smile of someone who thought they were 10 moves ahead. And here's the fun part. After we do the whole celebration thing, the gifts and cake and all that, what if we did a live DNA test, like those paternity reveal videos people do? We could make it a whole thing, proof that this baby is ours, you know? Shut down any potential gossip before it starts. There it was, the trap, presented as celebration, the public humiliation disguised as fun. He'd spend the next 3 weeks building anticipation, making sure everyone they knew would be there to witness what he thought would be Nia's destruction. A DNA test? Nia asked carefully. At the party? Why not? Those at-home kits are super accurate now. We swab, send it off before the party, get results back in time for the celebration, then boom, we reveal it together. Could even get one of those gender reveal setups, do both announcements at once. His eyes glittered with anticipation. Everyone there to witness our perfect little family. Everyone there to witness him expose her supposed infidelity, claim the moral high ground, position himself as the wronged husband while she stood publicly humiliated, pregnant with a child he'd claim wasn't his, her reputation destroyed, her inheritance contestable, her custody rights questionable. It was brilliant. It was thorough. It was exactly the kind of public trap that would make fighting back nearly impossible. Okay, Nia heard herself say. Let's do it. Caleb's smile widened. Yeah? You're sure? I'm sure. It sounds perfect. She touched her belly where the baby Daniel Price's biological child, conceived through Caleb's bribed conspiracy, kicked against her palm. Let's give everyone something to remember. That's my girl, Caleb said, kissing her forehead. I knew you'd love it. I'll handle the guest list. You handle the decorations and food. Make it nice, okay? This is important. It will be perfect, Nia promised. I guarantee it. The next morning, while Caleb was at work, Nia made 3 phone calls. First to Rachel. He's planning the public trap. 3 weeks. Savannah. He wants to do a DNA reveal in front of everyone. Rachel's laugh was sharp and delighted. He's walking straight into it. Perfect. I'll have everything ready: documents, financial records, witness statements. Claire Jennings agreed to attend if we need her testimony. Second to Sarah Morales, the attorney her mother had recommended. We need to coordinate with law enforcement. I want everything legal, documented, unassailable. Sarah's voice was crisp and professional. I've already been in contact with the DA's office. With the evidence Rachel's gathered, the embezzlement, the IVF fraud, the pattern of previous victims, they're prepared to move forward. We'll need to time the arrest carefully, but yes, this can be done at the party if that's what you want. Third, to her mother, Lorraine Harris, in Silver Spring, Maryland. They hadn't spoken properly in 2 years, not since Lorraine had warned Nia that Caleb's charm felt calculated, that something about him didn't sit right. Mom, Nia said when Lorraine answered, you were right about him, about everything. There was a long pause, then her mother's voice, carefully controlled. Tell me what you need, baby. I need you in Savannah in 3 weeks. I need you to watch me do what you taught me to do. Wait for the right moment, gather the evidence, and let the truth speak for itself. I'll be there, Lorraine said. And Nia, I'm proud of you. For 3 weeks, Nia planned a party with meticulous attention to detail. She rented the Savannah house through Caleb's parents. She hired caterers, ordered a beautiful cake decorated with baby booties and rattles. She sent invitations to everyone Caleb had suggested: his parents, his brother, his business associates, his most important clients. She also sent invitations to people Caleb didn't know about. Claire Jennings, who would drive down from Baltimore. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Savannah PD, who would arrive in plain clothes. Daniel Price, the sperm donor, who deserved to know the truth about how his genetic material had been used. She coordinated with Rachel and Sarah daily, reviewing evidence, confirming timelines, ensuring every document was properly authenticated and legally admissible. She bought a dress that accommodated her 7-month pregnant belly, soft blue, modest, the kind of dress that would photograph well, that would make her look sympathetic and dignified when the photos from this day inevitably spread. And every evening, she came home to Caleb, who grew more excited as the party approached. Everyone's confirmed, he said 5 days before the event, scrolling through responses on his phone. My whole office is coming. Your boss said she wouldn't miss it. This is going to be amazing. Amazing, Nia echoed, and wondered if he heard the different meaning in her voice. The night before the party, Nia packed a bag not for Savannah, but for afterward. Clothes, toiletries, copies of every document, a folder containing proof of everything. She placed it in her car trunk, hidden under the spare tire, insurance against whatever might happen. She slept poorly, the baby active and restless inside her, as if sensing the tension. In the darkness, she whispered to her daughter, tomorrow, everything changes. Tomorrow, the truth comes out. Tomorrow, we're finally free. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for a celebration. Caleb was cheerful during the drive to Savannah, talking about the surprise on people's faces when they revealed the DNA results, about how this would be the start of their family story, about how everyone would remember this day. They certainly will, Nia murmured. When they arrived, the house was already set up exactly as Nia had specified. White tents in the backyard, tables arranged in a semicircle around a small stage area where Caleb planned to make his revelation. Flowers, balloons, a table for gifts. Everything perfect. Everything ready. Rachel arrived early, dressed as a guest, carrying a leather portfolio that Nia knew contained documentation that would end Caleb's freedom. Sarah Morales came with her husband, blending into the crowd. Detective Martinez stood near the refreshment table, looking like any other middle-aged woman enjoying a party. Claire Jennings arrived with her sister, her face pale but determined. Daniel Price came alone, nervous, positioned near the back where he could witness but not be immediately visible. By 2 p.m., over 50 people had gathered in the backyard. Caleb's parents looking proud, his colleagues drinking champagne, Nia's co-workers offering congratulations, friends and neighbors filling the space with chatter and laughter. And in the center of it all stood Caleb Reynolds, beaming with confidence, holding the DNA test results he'd received that morning in a sealed envelope, believing this moment would crown his perfect crime. Nia stood beside him, one hand on her pregnant belly, the other holding a microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Caleb and I are so grateful to have you here to celebrate our baby." Caleb squeezed her shoulder, grinning at the crowd. "Before we do the DNA reveal my husband has planned," Nia continued, "there's something important everyone should know." Caleb's smile faltered slightly. "Honey, maybe we should." "No," Nia said, her voice gentle but absolute. "I think now is perfect." She turned to face the crowd, her hands still on her belly, her daughter kicking inside her as if urging her forward. "3 months ago, I learned that my pregnancy was the result of a crime, and I think it's time everyone knew the truth." Caleb's face went white, and Nia began to speak. The backyard went silent, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant sound of music from a neighbor's house. Nia held the microphone steady, her voice carrying across 50 stunned faces. "4 months ago," she said, "I went for a routine ultrasound. My baby was perfectly healthy, but my doctor told me something that changed everything. She told me my husband had committed IVF fraud." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Caleb grabbed for the microphone, but Nia stepped back smoothly, her hand protective over her belly. "Caleb bribed 2 staff members at our fertility clinic," she continued, her voice calm and factual. "A nurse named Lily Brown and an embryologist named Marcus Walsh. He paid them $15,000 each to replace his sperm with donor sperm during our IVF treatment." "That's not true," Caleb shouted, his face flushed. "She's having a breakdown pregnancy hormones." "Marcus is here today," Nia said, gesturing toward a nervous young man near the back. "He can confirm everything. He kept copies of the payments, the bank transfers, the text messages where my husband threatened him if he ever told anyone." Marcus stepped forward slightly, nodding, his face pale but resolute. Caleb's mother stood up from her seat, her face stricken. "Caleb, tell me this isn't true." "It's not what it looks like," he stammered, then caught himself. "She's confused." "5 years ago, you were Caleb Peterson in Baltimore," Nia said. 3 years before that, Caleb Richardson in Charlotte. Different last names, same pattern." She nodded to Rachel, who stepped forward and handed her a folder. "These are medical records from our fertility clinic," Nia said, holding up documents. "They show that my husband has known since he was 17 years old that he's permanently infertile due to childhood mumps. 0 sperm count. He's never been able to have biological children." The crowd erupted in whispers. Caleb's father stood, his face dark with fury. "So why the IVF fraud?" someone called out. "Because he needed me pregnant for his plan to work," Nia said. "His plan was to wait until after the birth, then demand a DNA test, the one he wanted to do here today, in front of all of you. The test would show the baby wasn't biologically his, and he'd accuse me of infidelity." She pulled out more documents. "He would have used that accusation to contest my late grandmother's will, to claim I was an unfit mother, to take custody of our child and access to my inheritance. All while positioning himself as the wronged husband." "Lies," Caleb screamed. "She's making this up." "Am I making up the $187,000 you owe to underground poker rooms in Charlotte?" Nia's voice stayed level. "Or the $73,000 you embezzled from client accounts at your firm?" Caleb's boss, standing near the cake table, went rigid. "Mr. Davidson," Nia said, addressing him directly, "I have documentation of your employees' financial crimes." Rachel Grant, a private investigator, has been auditing his accounts for 3 weeks. He's been stealing from clients through fake fee adjustments. Davidson's face went from confused to furious in seconds. And Mom, Dad, Nia said, turning to Caleb's parents, the rental income from my Jacksonville property? He's been depositing $2,200 a month into our joint account while keeping $2,000 a month in a separate account you didn't know about. $36,000 hidden over 18 months. Caleb backed toward the house, his confidence evaporating. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can prove all of it, Nia said. She gestured toward Claire Jennings, who stepped forward, trembling but determined. My name is Claire Jennings, the woman said, her voice shaking. 5 years ago, this man who called himself Caleb Peterson did the same thing to me. Romanced me, gained my trust, convinced me to let him invest my inheritance. Then he stole $200,000 and disappeared. Another woman stepped forward from near the tent, Melissa Torres. He took $80,000 from me in Charlotte, called himself Caleb Richardson. The crowd's whispers turned to shocked silence. He's a serial con artist, Nia said quietly. He targets women with inheritance money, manipulates them, steals from them, and disappears. But he couldn't just disappear this time, because I kept my property in my name only. So he needed a legal mechanism, a contested divorce where he could claim I'd cheated, where he could position himself as the victim. Caleb's mother was crying now, her hand over her mouth in horror. The pregnancy was leverage, Nia continued. The DNA trap was the endgame, and this party, this public celebration he insisted on, was supposed to be my humiliation. The moment everyone watched him expose my supposed infidelity and destroy my credibility. She looked directly at Caleb, who stood frozen near the porch stairs. But I learned the truth 3 months ago, and I've spent every day since gathering evidence, contacting victims, building an unassailable case, not for revenge, for protection. For my daughter, who deserves better than a con artist's father. Detective Martinez stepped forward, her badge visible now. Mr. Reynolds, she said formally, or Peterson, or Richardson, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, and medical identity theft. 2 uniformed officers emerged from inside the house they'd been waiting, coordinated, ready. Caleb's legs buckled. No, you can't, I can explain. You have the right to remain silent, Martinez said, pulling out handcuffs. Caleb looked at Nia, desperate. Please, think about our baby, our family. I made mistakes, but she's not our baby, Nia said softly. She's mine. And I'm thinking about her. That's why this is happening. The officers cuffed him in front of 50 witnesses, his parents sobbing, his colleagues staring in horror, his boss already on the phone with his attorney, friends and neighbors recording on their phones. The moment captured from a dozen angles. As they led him toward the patrol car parked at the curb, Caleb twisted back one more time. I loved you, he said. Nia met his eyes, one hand on her pregnant belly, her voice steady. No. You needed me. There's a difference. The patrol car door closed. And in the shocked silence that followed, Nia's mother stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her daughter. You did it, Lorraine whispered. Nia nodded, exhausted and vindicated. The party ended quickly after that, guests dispersing with shocked faces and whispered conversations. But Nia stayed, standing in the backyard where Caleb had planned her destruction, holding the evidence that had instead destroyed him. Justice, she thought, wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just patient. The courtroom in Chatham County, Georgia, was smaller than Nia had expected, less dramatic than television had taught her to anticipate. No soaring ceilings or grand jury boxes, just functional space where justice moved with procedural efficiency. Nia sat in the gallery between her mother and Rachel Grant, 7.5 months pregnant now, her belly pressing against the bench in front of her. Caleb sat at the defense table with his court-appointed attorney, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of the expensive suits she'd watched him choose every morning for 3 years. He'd been denied bail. The judge had taken one look at his history of disappearing from previous fraud cases and deemed him a flight risk. The prosecution presented their case with methodical precision. Dr. Miriam Chen testified about the nurse's confession, about the medical fraud, about the bribery scheme that had violated every ethical standard of fertility medicine. Marcus Walsh, granted immunity in exchange for testimony, described exactly how Caleb had approached him, how the payments were structured, how he'd been threatened into silence. Claire Jennings's voice shook but held, as she described the Baltimore scheme, the fake investment firm, the stolen inheritance, the sudden disappearance. Melissa Torres described the same pattern, different name, same playbook. Forensic accountant David Kim presented a damning audit of Caleb's business records, client funds diverted, fake statements created, a paper trail of embezzlement that spanned 2 years and 17 victims. Detective Sarah Martinez testified about the gambling debts, the offshore accounts, the debt collectors who'd been looking for Caleb for 8 months, about the rental property, money he'd hidden, about the separate accounts Nia hadn't known existed. Caleb's attorney tried to mount a defense, argued that the relationships with previous women had been consensual, that the IVF situation was a misunderstanding, that the financial irregularities were accounting errors. But there was too much evidence, too many victims, too clear a pattern. On the third day, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, medical identity theft, wire fraud. Caleb's face crumpled when the verdict was read. His parents, sitting across the aisle from Nia, wept quietly. His brother left without speaking to anyone. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge, a black woman in her 60s named Denise Crawford, reviewed the presenting reports with methodical attention. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, looking at Caleb over her glasses, "or Peterson, or Richardson, or whatever name you've used, you've demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior spanning at least 7 years. You've targeted vulnerable women, stolen their resources, and disappeared before facing consequences. That pattern ends today." She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 8 years, all assets frozen, and subject to restitution for victims. Supervised release afterward with no contact allowed with any previous victims, including Nia. The custody hearing happened simultaneously in family court. Caleb's parental rights were terminated without contest. He couldn't fight from prison. His attorney advised him that trying would only extend his sentence with additional perjury charges. Nia was granted full legal and physical custody. The birth certificate would list only her name. Her daughter would have only her surname. Caleb Reynolds would legally cease to exist in his daughter's life. Sarah Morales had been ruthlessly efficient. "He tried to erase you," she told Nia after the hearing. "So we erased him, legally, completely, permanently." The Jacksonville property was finally audited. Caleb had indeed been siphoning money, but the total was actually higher than Rachel had first calculated, nearly $48,000 over 2 years. The hidden account was frozen, and the funds returned. Nia sold the property and invested the proceeds into a trust for her daughter, ironclad, legally protected, with clauses that prevented anyone from accessing it except for her child's benefit. She quit her job at the nonprofit. The stress, the questions, the pitying looks from co-workers who'd witnessed everything it was too much. Instead, she used a small portion of her inheritance to start a consulting business helping other nonprofits with development strategy. She could work from home, set her own hours, be present for her daughter. Her mother sold her house in Silver Spring and bought a condo in Atlanta 10 minutes from Nia's apartment. "You need help when the baby comes," Lorraine said simply, "and I've missed enough of your life." They rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully, through late-night conversations and shared meals, and the gradual recognition that they'd both been protecting each other in different ways. Lorraine by staying away when asked, Nia by trying to prove she didn't need protection. "You were right about him," Nia said one evening, 8 months pregnant, sitting in her mother's new living room. "I was," Lorraine agreed, "but you needed to learn it yourself. If I'd forced you to see it, you would have resented me. This way," she gestured at Nia's belly. "You learned it, documented it, and destroyed him using everything I taught you about patience and evidence." "You taught me that." "Baby, I'm a retired judge. Of course I taught you that. You just didn't realize you were learning." 2 weeks before her due date, Nia felt the first contractions while reviewing client proposals in her home office. She called her mother. She called her doctor. She packed her hospital bag already prepared, organized, ready. And as she drove to Emory University Hospital with her mother beside her, Nia felt something she hadn't felt in 9 months. Pure, uncomplicated hope. The pain was coming. But so was her daughter. And everything, all the betrayal, all the planning, all the evidence in courtrooms and justice had been for this. For the moment when she could hold her child and promise, "I will never let anyone make you small." Promise Lorraine Reynolds was born at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late March, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces, with her mother's eyes and a cry that sounded like defiance. Nia held her daughter for the first time and understood what strength actually meant. Not aggression, not revenge, not even the patience she'd cultivated through 3 months of investigation. Just this, being fully present in the moment when everything changed. "She's perfect," Lorraine whispered, standing beside the hospital bed, her eyes wet. "She's ours," Nia corrected, and the pronoun felt like reclaiming something stolen. The birth certificate listed only one parent, Nia Brooks Reynolds. No father's name, no Caleb. No mention of the con artist who'd engineered this child's conception as part of a scheme to steal an inheritance. Promise would grow up knowing the truth, age-appropriate versions at first, fuller details later. But she would never doubt that she was wanted, loved, chosen every day by a mother who'd fought for her before she was even born. Daniel Price visited on the second day, nervous and uncertain. "I just wanted to see her," he said quietly, standing in the doorway. "I know I'm not. I mean, legally, I'm not her father. But she's half my genetics, and I wanted to know she was okay." Nia studied him, this stranger who'd donated sperm for what he thought was a legitimate couple, who'd been weaponized without consent, who'd also been victimized by Caleb's scheme. "You can visit," Nia said carefully. "Not as a father, but as I don't know. An uncle, maybe. Someone in her life who she can know about her genetic history. But legally, she's mine alone." Daniel nodded, relief visible on his face. "That's more than fair, thank you." He held Promise for exactly 5 minutes, tears streaming down his face, then handed her back with a gentleness that suggested he understood exactly what this child represented. Not his parenthood, but Nia's triumph. Recovery was slow but steady. Nia moved through the early weeks of motherhood with the same careful documentation she'd used, building her case, tracking feedings, diaper changes, sleep schedules. Not from anxiety, but from a need to control what she could, to create order in a world that had been chaotic for so long. Her mother stayed with her for the first month, handling logistics while Nia handled Promise. Shopping, cooking, answering the phone when friends called with congratulations and carefully worded questions about the father. "I'm a single mother by choice," became Nia's standard answer. "The donor isn't involved." Which was technically true. Rachel stopped by in the second week with flowers and a card that read simply, "You won." "I heard he's in federal prison in South Carolina," Rachel said, holding Promise with the confidence of someone who'd raised 3 kids of her own. "Word is he's not adjusting well. Turns out con artists don't do great when they can't manipulate their way out of consequences." "I don't think about him," Nia said, and realized it was true. Caleb had become background noise, a closed chapter, a cautionary tale, evidence that some battles aren't won through confrontation, but through patience and documentation and letting institutions do what they're designed to do. Claire Jennings sent a gift basket with a note. "Thank you for giving me closure I didn't know I needed. Your courage helped me heal too." Melissa Torres emailed photos of herself at her own wedding, caption reading, "Found someone real this time. Thank you for stopping him before he hurt more women." The other victims, the ones Rachel had identified but who hadn't testified, sent cards and small gifts, a collective exhale from women who'd been wronged and had finally witnessed justice. 3 months after Promise's birth, Nia sat on her small apartment balcony, her daughter sleeping in a carrier against her chest, watching Atlanta's evening traffic crawl past below. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Morales. Caleb's appeal was denied, 12 years upheld. It's over. Nia looked down at Promise, at her daughter's perfect sleeping face, and felt the last knot of tension release from her chest. It was over. Not because Caleb was in prison, though he was. Not because she'd won in court, though she had. It was over because she'd stopped carrying his lies, his manipulation, his plan to destroy her. She'd set them down, documented them, handed them to people whose job was justice, and walked away into a life he'd never imagined for her. A life she'd built not from rage, but from protection. Not from revenge, but from refusal. Refusal to be erased. Refusal to be silenced. Refusal to accept his narrative about who she was and what she deserved. That evening, Nia's mother came over for dinner, a regular Tuesday ritual they'd established. "What are you thinking about?" Lorraine asked, watching her daughter stare at the skyline. "About how Caleb thought he'd married someone he could outsmart," Nia said. "Someone quiet and trusting and easy to manipulate. And instead, he married someone who knew when to wait." Nia smiled down at Promise. And when to let truth do the work rage never could. Lorraine raised her wine glass. To patience. To truth, Nia countered, raising her water glass. To promise, they said together. 6 years later, Promise Lorraine Reynolds would start first grade carrying a backpack and her mother's quiet strength. She would know she was loved. She would know she was chosen. She would know her origin story involved a mother who fought for her before she even took her first breath. And she would learn, the way all children of survivors learn, that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the woman who smiled and cooked dinner and slept beside a monster while quietly building the case that would bury him. Sometimes it's the silence that gathers evidence. Sometimes it's the patience that waits for truth to ripen. And sometimes, most powerfully, it's the mother who looks at her daughter and says, "No one will ever make you small, I promise." Because some women don't raise their voices when they're wronged. They raise the law. And then they raise their daughters to know the difference.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Subscribe, like, and click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.